What up, y'all? This is what day is this? This is day 6 of Build Your Inner Playground. And I could not be more grateful to bring on to this platform my good friend, Rob Carney of Wholehealth Connections. We're going to talk about stress management today. Stress management is vital to building your inner playground. It's something that we all could improve upon, no matter how much time we dedicate to self-care and stress reduction. To really integrate this into our lifestyle and to make it a permanent part of our disposition to play, fun, and enjoyment in our life is absolutely essential, absolutely key to being a compassionate leader, leading with relentless self-love, which is the whole purpose of the inner playground, right? So today, Rob and I are going to get into some powerful topics when it comes to stress management, how to integrate this into your week, some practices you can incorporate on a daily basis, as well as some supplementation that's really, really helpful for accelerating the benefits of stress management. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome on Rob. Rob, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, my friend. Thank you for being here. And it's an honor to talk about stress, which is my favorite topic to speak about. So when I got this invitation, I was like, man, I'm going to be there. So thank you for being here. And thank you to everyone listening.
Oh, right on, man. We're happy to have you. So I just want to, first of all, clarify for the listeners who you are, what your journey has been, and why you have come to be such a potent figure in the health and wellness community.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for me, I became interested by force in terms of holistic health and wellness. So I had a pretty bad concussion about 10 years ago. At that point, I was a state swimmer, 3-sport athlete in high school, and had to really reevaluate my approach to life, basically, as that was my second concussion, which led to about 5 months of being unable to really do any sort of movement. That happened in the summer, and it wasn't until like early winter, end of fall, that I was able to, start doing things that I enjoyed, like, basketball, swimming, without getting really dizzy, double vision. So basically, long story short, I got introduced to yoga. That was really the only movement I could do during that time of my concussion recovery, which, led to meditation, studying psychology, neuroscience, nutrition, end up, going into the nutrition psychology route in college, and graduating with a degree in sustainable food and farming. So I really kind of, blended all that together and, with a focus on holistic human health. So kind of integrating the combination of the planetary health with the human health. Then after graduation, I went to Asia for a while. I really learned the Eastern philosophies, and throughout, my college and high school career, I worked with and studied with a lot of nutritionists, acupuncturists, massage therapists, basically anyone in the holistic world that would work with me, teach with me. So I became very well equipped with many different tools and techniques to help heal my own body, my own brain, which led to, just a deep passion to, help others. And that led me to the Czech Institute, where I became a certified holistic lifestyle coach. And so now at this point, what I do is, as Avi said, I founded Wholehealth Connections about 2 years ago, September of 2018. And now what I do is basically I kind of see myself as, a matchmaker for helping people find the best products, the best services, best practitioners out there. That may be me or that may be someone else. And so basically a lot of what I do is really dive into a lot of the best supplements out there, a lot of the best biohacking tools and tricks we can do. And specifically what I specialize in my practice and with my clients is stress and sleep. And that kind of, the third piece of that puzzle is energy, but you got to focus on stress first, then sleep, and then energy will come naturally. So yeah, stress is the pinnacle of all the most important things, I think, in the world that we need to focus on in this modern age.
Extremely well said. What I love about Rob is somebody who has walked through this journey himself, and he's been on both sides of the stressed out versus stress-free versus in the middle, managing stress in the midst of being a business owner. So he's walked the path. This isn't theory. This is something that Rob embodies, and I can attest to that, having spent some quality time with him recently. So Rob, for all the people in this challenge, what we've talked about so far, just to catch you up, is some vision, mission, values. So really what the vision for our inner playground is, our mission, our values. And for the last couple of days, we've also talked about unraveling limiting beliefs. So the very beliefs at our core that prevent us from really showing up in our lives as entrepreneurs, as athletes. And then yesterday we got into some time management skills. So how to really integrate that into the week, make sure that your schedule is aligned with your ability to enjoy yourself, as well as the ability to make meaningful change happen on kind of a big picture perspective and small scale. So now today we're talking about stress management, as you've highlighted. So for people who are in the midst of trying to create a new project, something in their life that is meaningful, something in their life that represents who they are, in alignment with their core values, what are some tips that you can give them just off the bat to kind of frame and contextualize the conversation around stress management for people who are really high achievers?
Absolutely. Well, I think the most important thing is what you started with is that, people need to have a purpose. They need to have a why and a vision. Like, what do you really want to do? Because you can, just kind of aimlessly be, the way I like to think of it is you're on a sailboat. Either you're directing the sails or just letting the wind kind of bat you from side to side. So if you have a direction you're going in, that right there makes everything in life a lot easier, a lot less stressful, because now you have a purpose. And without a purpose, we are just kind of at the whim of other people. They blow us around and we have no real control and no real sense of direction. And so with that being said, that in of itself is an innate level of stress. So first step is, kind of finding that purpose, which I'm glad that you've already touched on that and that mission. Before I dive into some specific techniques, I kind of want to just give a little background about, what stress is, its purpose, because it's actually here to help and protect us. And so generally speaking, our nervous system is broken down into the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So sympathetic being the fight, flight, or freeze mode, where that's kind of that survival mode where, traditionally if we're being chased by a tiger, we either freeze, we fight, or we run. And that's kind of, it pumps adrenaline, pumps cortisol, all these stress hormones. It shuts down digestion, shuts down the desire to procreate, any sort of, other things that are not immediate survival. So that's the sympathetic nervous system. And then we have parasympathetic nervous system, which is more focused on rest, recovery, digest, reproduction, all things that are more, things that you're going to be doing when you're not running or fighting for your life. So basically with those two things being said, the sympathetic nervous system was there to help us survive. And that's why we got to where we are as a species, because without that, we wouldn't have those hormones to pump through us. We wouldn't have been able to survive a lot of these encounters throughout our history. And then the parasympathetic is really where kind of all the magic happens, in a sense that, we're resting, digesting, procreating, and really furthering the betterment of the species, not just our own individual survival. So with that being said, the challenge now is that our sympathetic nervous system, which was once arguably the most impressive part of human existence in terms of its ability to survive and adapt in acute situations, has now turned into this burden for us because we're so sympathetically dominated as we have chronic stress. So the sympathetic nervous system was designed to deal with acute stress, because you think about in nature, there's very rarely chronic stress. You're not worrying about your job in nature. You're not worrying about, long-term like finance goals or finance stresses. It's very acute. It's survival. So our brain has almost been hijacked by this modern day that now we're stuck in survival mode. We're stuck in this, tense, stressed for could be 5 months, could be 50 years. Some people that go through a whole life in this state of stress. And what does that cause? It causes things like inflammation, headaches, joint pain, all things that are associated with a modern lifestyle. Obesity, again, coming back to we can't digest our food. We can't really absorb things. Low sex drive. I think I saw some crazy number that the amount of men in their 20s that are on Viagra now is, I want to say it's like upwards of 20%, like a shocking number, something that should not be happening for men in their 20s. And that comes down to, again, being so overstressed. So with all that being said, this is where we want to be able to shift into that parasympathetic nervous system, more into that, creation mode, that thriving, that improving mode where we're actually able to rest, digest, and recover. And, I just want to kind of leave that there before we go any further.
Extremely well said, man. And I love that you bring that into the context of what we're talking about, because most people say, oh, sympathetic nervous system, it's bad. It's like, well, no, you highlight that it was one of the most impressive and important components of our survival, right? So it's there for a reason. It's just that, like you said, our modern lifestyle has hijacked that system. And now we're in this state of, we're out of control, basically.
Right.
And so I want to highlight too, that when it comes to play, we talked about this on the very first day. Are you familiar with Stephen Porges? He's the polyvagal theory guy.
No, I'm not.
He's a cool guy to check out. He's a professor at UNC, and he talks about the polyvagal theory in response to trauma. And he also has this really interesting description and kind of expose on play. And one of the things that happens in play is a fight or flight arousal due to the lack of potential safety, just like peekaboo with a child. So you cover your eyes and there's this threat to the child. They're like, where did my safety go? And then in revealing the eyes and expressing that affection, they come back to a state of calm. So with that idea of play in mind, it's very interesting you bring this up, because people who are really, really driven and overstimulated to begin with, who go to party to have play, or who go to play sports to have fun, right, they're often exacerbating the effects of stress. So I'd love to get into a few things that you think could help those people manage the fluctuations between work and play.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a great point. I think that it is something that, you know, if I'm working with someone who is extremely high achieving, extremely stressed out, oftentimes I'm not recommending exercise, because exercise is, as you said, like play and a lot of these other factors, it is activating that sympathetic nervous system. And sometimes, you know, let's go back to a healthy person before I dive into that. So a healthy person, you could even say by all the things that exercise does to us, it's actually a bad thing. And I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying when you look at it, it causes inflammation, it causes lactic acid buildup, it causes stress, cortisol is released, adrenaline is released, you know, it causes deep breathing, muscle breakdown. So when you break down what exercise is doing, you know, we can say, oh, those are all bad things. But in a healthy body, it comes back to, you know, being in a state of hormesis, where we're using stress, the right amount of stress, to help us grow. So with that being said, a person who is already stressed out, adding another stress is going to be putting them over the top. So oftentimes, you know, the best thing to do for someone that's overly stressed is to focus on not adding more stress, but actually helping to, again, return to that parasympathetic nervous system. That can be things like Tai Chi, deep breathing, meditation, walking, journaling, you know, reading. And I think a big thing with that is making sure that we're disconnecting from technology while we're doing all these things. Because I mean, I won't even get into the EMFs, non-native EMFs, and how that can cause stress on the body. But let's just think about the fact that if you're going for a walk to relieve your stress, but you're also taking your phone and reading work emails while you're walking, that's not really helping your parasympathetic nervous system. So what we want to do is really, in my opinion, is really disconnect and be very present to the moment with every activity that we're doing, and really using that intentionally to say, hey, I'm going to go for a walk to move my body, to breathe, and to relieve stress, and to be present to that walk. I'm not going to take my phone with me. I just took my phone with me on a walk for the first time in months, and it was because I was listening to an audiobook and I had it on airplane mode. So I'm not seeing notifications come up. I'm not having, you know, vibrations in my pocket. Being as fully present to the moment as we can. And maybe that is going for a walk with an audiobook. If you're so used to having that stimulation, sometimes that is a good way to kind of ease into that, or a podcast that you enjoy. But I think the main piece here is to focus on being present and focus on recognizing that we're in a state of stress and we want to change that, correct that, and really balance that out, because there's always going to be stress in our life. And again, coming back to stress isn't bad. It's not a bad thing. It helps us grow and helps us learn. But at the end of the day, it's all about coming to that balance. And I think that's really the point I want to drive home, is that stress isn't bad. Sympathetic nervous system isn't bad. We just want to find balance within that stress.
Extremely well said. It's so funny because like basically every day that we've had in this challenge just all come back to balance, like no matter what we're talking about. And I love that you mentioned the fact that most people just don't know how to regulate that. They've never been taught, right? So right. You give them an activity like Tai Chi, and then all of a sudden, I mentioned this last night, you approach it from a sympathetic perspective. It's like, oh, I got to get my gong in and finish this.
Right.
And you and I have probably both struggled with this because we're very high achievers. We want to get things done. And so could you help people on this call, well, on this call, it's you and me, but in this challenge, I should say, contextualize and reframe these parasympathetic activities such that they're not approaching them from the sympathetic perspective?
Yeah, I think it comes back to that intention. And I think that that's being very clear with, you know, sometimes for high performers, I like to frame it as this. Look, I'm going to go for a walk without technology by myself. And we can see that as, oh, well, I don't have time to do that. It's a waste of time. I should be working. I should be doing X, Y, and Z. But how about this? What if the time we spend walking or meditating or journaling or whatever the, parasympathetic activity is, what if we're viewing that as a way that's actually amplifying the rest of our working time? What if we're viewing that as recharging our battery, or maybe even boosting our battery to be more effective when we're working? And I think it really comes down to perspective of how we're viewing the activity that we're doing. We're reminding ourselves the intention of this is to build up energy. We don't want to be using energy and depleting energy while we're doing that. So we're not speed walking. We're walking slowly so we can be moving, breathing, but not panting. We want to be able to, again, slow things down. So I think the important takeaway is being intentional, being mindful and present to the moment, focusing on things like breathing, on moving slowly, and recognizing that this activity should be actually building up more energy, not taking more away. And that can help us with whatever activity we're going to be doing for the rest of the day. If that's working 8 hours at our computer, if I go for a walk in the morning, my 8 hours at the computer will be much more effective because I have a stronger battery charge.
I love that. I really, really love the component of intention there. And it brought up what I saw in your conversation with Zach the other day about water and Masuro Emoto. Now, one can go to Simpson Spring and get some water, right? And it's good,
Right.
natural, clean spring water. And they can chug it. And technically it's like, oh yeah, it's good water, no problem. But tell people about the difference in water structure when you set an intention with that glass of water, because I think that's directly aligned with what you're saying here about stress management.
So now you're diving into a book and some resources that have just completely changed the way I view the world the past few weeks. So just to give a little backstory. So Masaru Emoto, he's a water researcher. He's been doing this for upwards of 40 years now. He's from Japan. And basically what he did was study the structure of water. He'd freeze it and look at the water crystals under a microscope. And when he, got the water from, let's say, a natural spring versus tap water, the spring water had clear crystals. The tap water was very chaotic, not very aesthetically pleasing, not together. It was incomplete and incoherent. He also experimented with, different researchers setting intentions while they were looking at the water. And by thought alone, the shape and the formation of the crystals actually shifted. So you could have the same water from the same lake, different researcher looking with a different intention, and the shape of the crystal is different. You can have different words being said, specifically love and gratitude produce the most coherent crystals, whether it was tap water, spring water, lake water, whatever. Love and gratitude form the most coherent crystals. And so what does all that mean? Is this some woo-woo shit? No, it's not. It's actually scientific research that's been done for decades. And the big thing that I take away from that is the power of human thought and intention is so much more powerful than we even can conceive of. It's so easy to get caught up in this physical body, think that this physical reality is everything. But at the end of the day, our thoughts and intentions, everything that's ever been created started with a thought. Google, one of the biggest companies in the world, started with a thought. Amazon, whatever big company you want to use an example, that started with a thought and intention and energy going towards that to make that creation. So with that being said, as it relates to, stress and stress reduction, if we can go into an activity with the intention to relieve stress, the intention to recharge our battery, that is going to be much more effective. Let's say 20 minutes of Tai Chi. 20 minutes of Tai Chi with the intention of stress reduction, building up the energy is extremely different. I can say this from doing this myself than going in there and saying, oh, I got to do my 20 minutes of Tai Chi. I'm just going to do this. And then thinking about other things, not being mindful, not being present. And then same Tai Chi practice, same exact movement, same exact time of day, completely different result with an intention.
I love that, man. And I just visualize us both like working this out, like, oh, the gong, we're doing the gong versus like just, I've actually transitioned in my Tai Chi practice from this perspective. It used to be, I need to do my 20 minutes every day. And now it's like, I'll do it when I feel like it, because I'm going to get more out of that. If I do 3 days straight and I force myself to do it versus 1 day a week where I'm really down to do Tai Chi, I'll get more benefit from that 1 day.
Right. And I'm going to dive into that too, because I think that's a really important point, that I basically now every morning I do something that gets me, present and grounded. Now, what that is up to what I feel is right in that day. So I think that really comes down to building up an effective toolbox of stress relieving tips. When I go for my midday break, if I'm just recording a podcast or I'm writing something or creating something and I need a break, I don't say, oh, I'm going to do Tai Chi today. I go outside, I get in the sun, barefoot, preferably in the sun. And then I think, well, what does my body need right now? Do I need exercise? Okay, maybe yes. Do I need Tai Chi? Do I need meditation? Do I need yoga? Do I need to just do some reading, some breathing, some journaling? So I have all these tools in my toolbox that, like you said, rather than forcing something in there, it's allowing our body to tell us what it needs and what it wants in this moment. Because any supposedly non-stressful activity that's supposed to bring us into parasympathetic dominant state can actually cause more stress if we have stress associated with that activity in our thoughts and intentions surrounding that. So like you said, if you do Tai Chi 3 days in a row and you force it and you really don't like it and you really don't want to do it today, but some person on the internet told you to do Tai Chi for 100 days straight, and now you're on day 4 and now you're actually causing more stress. Well, that's not the tool that you need to use that day. So I think a big part of it is just building up tools in the arsenal, also becoming very aware of the fact that that tool may change every single day. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, because we're a different person every single day. Our body is changing, our cells are changing, the world is changing around us. And I personally believe that everything is interconnected in one way or another. So things that are happening in our family may be affecting us that day. So maybe Tai Chi isn't the best thing. Maybe it's meditation. So I think it's really building up an important toolbox, which I can get into some of those activities pretty shortly, about what some of those are.
Yeah, man. What's in the Rob Carney arsenal? Because I know there are a lot of tricks up that sleeve.
Yeah. So I think the biggest one comes to disconnecting from technology. And I really, truly believe that that's really where everything stems from, because we are so addicted to the screen that we're looking at. We're so addicted to stimulation, whether it's in our ears, from our eyes, from like the hormones of, a stressful movie, whatever those, addictions are. So just to kind of really hammer this point home, when we are narrowly focusing on something, that is a sympathetic response. Again, think about, goes back to the tiger. If there's a tiger there, you're not looking at the flowers. Oh, those are beautiful flowers. You're focusing on the tiger that's in front of you. So you kind of have the blinders on, that you're focusing so narrowly on something, you're intently staring, and that's getting you into that sympathetic dominant state, because again, you're saying, oh my God, I need to focus on this one thing because this is so important, and I'm going to focus all my energy on that and forget about digestion, forget about, procreation, all these other aspects. So just by simply staring at a screen, especially a small object, that's really going to stimulate that effect. And think about when you're on a hike and you get up to the top of the mountain, you see the view. Looking at a wide variety of things, especially nature, activates the parasympathetic nervous system. And that's why when you get to the top of a hike, you have that, oh, wow, this is beautiful feeling, that relaxed, kind of accomplished, parasympathetic dominant feeling. So with that being said, it is so essential to disconnect from the phone as often as possible. And the way I like to say is like, look, if you're not using social media to, really enhance relationships or, work, make money so you can survive, I think that, avoiding the phone as much as possible is the best thing we can do, instead of mindless scrolling, staring at a screen. So avoiding a screen, number 1. Number 2, again, like the mountain, get out in nature, look at things, look at, the leaves, look at the details in leaves, look at the ground, look at the views, go on a hike. That's so important to be immersed in nature, because again, as I said, I don't want to get too into EMFs, but being in a house with a phone that's creating non-native electromagnetic frequencies, where we have frequencies going through our body at all times, which is disruptive, causing stress. Whereas natural objects like trees, grass, animals have a native, and that's why dogs, cats, and pets can be very soothing to us and really relaxing to us, because they have native electromagnetic frequencies that are coherent with our own. So when we connect with nature, again, it's not just like this, oh, I'm connecting with nature and I'm really stressing. No, at a electric magnetical frequency, that is actually being more coherent and therefore reducing stress. So that being said, no phone, getting out of nature, that can mean walking, meditation. Again, maybe you can't meditate outside. Maybe it's 22 degrees and snowing and a windstorm outside. Okay, so do it in your house. That's okay too. Tai Chi, same thing. Journaling, getting things out of our head onto paper, and preferably writing. I found that writing more so than typing. Again, we're using more of our senses. We're writing, we're feeling the pen. There's pressure being used in our muscles, as opposed to typing, which can be, just kind of our fingers. It's more of a connective experience. So preferably writing when we're journaling. That could just be writing a page, writing something you're grateful for, which that's a whole nother topic. Getting back into that love and gratitude, entering into that zone is a great place to live from, great place to be happy and mindful and stress relieved from. Talking to someone, having a conversation, talking about what you're going through. Why are you feeling stressed? Sometimes that's why talk therapy is so important for a lot of people. Just getting it out. Same thing as journaling. You're getting it out of your own head, out of your own system. Connecting with other people, connecting with animals, connecting with nature, connecting in general to another living creature, not connecting to your TV or your phone or your computer or whatever, connecting to another living creature. And again, that's why pets can be so helpful. Reading and learning, really filling our brain with things that are actually, helpful to our personal growth. Things that, if we're in a sympathetic state, it's hard for us to learn. That's why it's tough to go from, working really hard to then reading. It's like your brain is still thinking about the work because you're in that sympathetic mode. So I find that, grounding myself and then reading, or reading right when I wake up before I get into the hustle and bustle of the day, is a great way to ease into the day, or ease out of the day at the end of the day. And now this kind of comes back to, what I said, if you are in a overall stress state, exercise may not be the best thing. However, if you are pretty balanced in general, exercise is a great tool. One of my favorite tools for relieving stress, because sometimes just by bringing up the cortisol, the adrenaline, those stress hormones through exercise, and then we're done, they flush out. And now we've released a lot of those hormones. So again, it's one of those tools that if someone is extremely stressed and inflamed, that may not be the best tool in the right dosage. That's where it may be better to walk, Tai Chi, more movement. But movement in general, I think, is essential. And then breathing. So breathing, I think, is one of the most underlooked parts of health in general, which really, when I start diving into it, just astonishes me. When, we can go weeks without eating food, we can go days without drinking water, we can go like 3 minutes without breathing. Like, oxygen is pretty important to our survival, and we've become so detached from how important our breath is. And coming back to a sympathetic state, we're typically shallowly breathing through our mouth, just trying to get in as much oxygen as possible into our chest. It's a lot faster if you're running from a tiger or fighting to breathe in through your mouth, because you get in more than just your nose and just into your chest. It's faster and you can pump faster. However, for again being stress relieving, breathing in through the nose, focusing on breathing into the belly, 2/3 of the belly, 1/3 in the chest. That alone right there, if you do that every time you think about it, if you're sitting at a desk, after every project, every email, take a breath. That can literally take 6 seconds. Like, not going to kill your productivity, probably actually make it better. But if you just take a breath every time you think about it, a deep intentional breath, every time we think about it, that practice right there has changed so many people's lives I cannot even, count on 2 hands. So breathing intentionally is huge. And I'd say those are kind of the general bundles, and I'll just recap those really quickly. No phone, connecting with nature, connecting with another living being, movement as a whole, whatever that form of movement looks like, getting things out of your head, whether that's journaling, talking, connecting with other people, reading or learning, really getting into a different brain state, focusing on positivity, and then breathing. So I guess actually to kind of go into learning and reading, just mindset, really focusing on changing our mindset to that of positivity and that of being okay with where we are in the present moment.
I love what you're saying in this kind of mosaic of stress management too, because all of these things are super powerful practices. And to integrate it to what you said earlier, the intention with all of them is key. So if you can set an intention that's in alignment and congruence with the benefit of the activity, it's amplified. And then on top of that, you mentioned some super, super powerful techniques, especially when it comes to technology. I wanted to mention, sometimes I have this experience where I'll work all day, maybe Instagram, maybe working on my program, having client calls, whatever it is. And then finally, when I go see a friend or I see my parents and there's that human interaction, I go from kind of this like bored, melancholy state to very amplified and excited. So in a way, all the things you mentioned are also forms of play, right? Getting out into nature and not just that I'm going to hike. Like yesterday I went on a hike and it was purely like, I'm going to summit, I'm going to come back down. That was my intention. And thus it was really rigorous. But I wanted to also mention this. I got to the top. You mentioned the summit where you see this grand vista and you're like, oh, parasympathetic. I was so full of adrenaline because I had decided to climb up some rocks to get to the top, not take the trail, where if I fell, I would have been fucked up. And so by the time I got up there, I was so full of adrenaline, I couldn't really even enjoy the view. And so for me, it's like, yeah, man, that intention is key, but also reminding yourself that all these things are forms of play that you can integrate into your life. So it doesn't feel like, oh, I need to manage my stress now in order to feel good so I can play. It's like, no, let's marry them all together. Let's see how playful we can be from an intention perspective with the stress management tools, because that will amplify the gifts they have to offer.
Yes, absolutely. And I think an important part about what you just said there is that it's easy to get into, our logical structuring mind with all this, that, oh, I need to do 15 minutes of this and then 12 minutes of that and then 8 minutes of that. And then you have this perfect puzzle of the exact times, the exact timing, time and place. Everything has to be so precise. But again, that's not really, sometimes that is helpful. Let me say that. But oftentimes by over structuring and overthinking and over planning, we're actually creating a lot more stress around these things. And that's where I think play is really something I've really dove into the past year as something that is so important, especially, hanging out with our mutual friend, Ed Madden. He talks very much about play. And, what do we do when we host our Ice and Iron events? We're basically playing. We have jump ropes, hula hoops, trampolines, maces, dumbbells, tires, punching bags. It's basically a big kid's playground. And another thing that I really love about having a dog is being able to play. So, I give her a toy, I chase her, it's play. We play a little tug of war. There's no structure with a dog either. They're not thinking logical. Oh, I need to exercise for 8 minutes to get my steps in on my Fitbit. Like no one, like dogs, they're not thinking like that. So by really being able to disconnect from the logical mind and just getting into that play zone, I think is so important. Like, the flow state we talk about, like when you're playing basketball or swimming or whatever your favorite activity is, getting into that very present moment is really where the magic happens, because you're not thinking about the stresses from your work. You're not thinking about what to do later, what happened in the past, how you should have said this or should have done that or need to do this or need to do that. You're here right now. I think that's really what, life comes down to, is how present can we be? And that's really been something that I've been focusing on heavily lately, is when I go outside to ground myself, my phone doesn't come out with me. I know, all right, if I have a call in an hour, so, I pretty good mental clock. It's like, all right, roughly 45 minutes to give myself a little window, I'll go back inside. But during those 45 minutes, I'm not worried about the time. I'm there, I'm here, I'm focused on breathing and being present. And I think that the presence, I cannot stress enough how much that has changed my life, just focusing to be as present as I can to the moment. And really, that is a huge stress reliever.
That's really profound, because I think you and I can agree that some of the times that we're most present is when we're in the middle of that work, right?
Right.
Like a conversation like this, I'm fully in it. But if I have, like, before we got on, I had a conversation with my mom where I was like half present. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, cool. And that's really interesting too, because when you set the intention of presence, you change that topography of engagement. And for me, that's one thing that I struggle with often, because my sense of joy, my sense of fulfillment in life often comes from this overstimulated perspective. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like when we were out in Situate and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to swim across this lagoon and back. Like I didn't need to do that. But for some reason, that sense of joy and fulfillment and accomplishment is what drove me to do that. So.
Yeah. And I think it's also really important to recognize, like, every moment that we can be more present, whether that's our dedicated time that we're supposed to be, you know, building up energy or not, every moment that we can be more present, whether we want to or not. Like if it's a conversation, like, you know, maybe you're talking with your mom and you're like, oh, I need to get ready for this call, so I can't really be that present. But really being as present as we possibly can in every situation, whether it's a stressful one or not. Because oftentimes if we're being present in that stressful moment, we're actually better able to metabolize that and allow that to come up and go out. Whereas if we're kind of half present, we're kind of like, I don't really want to get involved with that. So now it gets kind of just inside of us and we're kind of holding on to it because we didn't really fully embody it. And now we need to let it go. And so that's where a lot of these tools are great for letting that stress go. And now with that being said, coming back to the water, you know, when we talk about love and gratitude forming the most beautiful and coherent crystals, only when we're in the present moment can we truly act from a place of love and gratitude. So what does that mean? If you're with your partner and you say, oh, I spend 6 hours a day with my partner, there's so much love in our relationship. But if you guys are on your phone for 5.5 of those 6 hours, you know, you're not being very present with each other. If you're sitting on the couch, yeah, you're together. But if you're sitting on your phone, not present with each other, that's not really a place of love. You know, that's kind of, you're in a different world. You're kind of half there, half there. And so to me, again, it comes down to being present, being disconnected, and being fully in with what we're doing. And so that leads me to the next point I want to touch on, which is really using the 6 foundation principles as a means of, you know, really analyzing what areas of our life need more attention, especially as it relates to stress. So moving, thinking, breathing, nutrition, hydration, sleep. So all 6 of those are affected by stress. You could be moving too much. You could be moving too little. You could be doing the wrong type of movement. Thinking, you'd be thinking negative thoughts. That's going to be causing stress. Breathing, if you're breathing shallowly, like we talked about, that's going to be causing stress. Nutrition, if you're eating McDonald's every day or processed foods every day, that's causing stress and inflammation in the body. That's causing stress on your digestive system, on your whole system. To detoxify that as well. Water, like we said, if you're not drinking quality water, that's putting stress in the body. If you're not sleeping well, if you're not sleeping well, you're definitely going to be stressed, because that's where we recover. So using those 6 foundation principles, I think, is a great way to kind of look, all right, so I'm moving pretty well, you know, I exercise every day. It feels really good with what I'm doing. Then I also do some walking to kind of cool down. All right, that's really good. Thinking, I watch the news a lot. I kind of have a lot of negative thoughts after watching the news. Sometimes I read horror stories or watch horror movies, so I kind of have some negative thoughts. All right, maybe that's an area I'll look into. Nutrition, I'm eating all organic food. Okay, all right, that one's pretty good. Water, I drink tap water sometimes, and then, you know, sometimes I just use a Brita filter. Maybe I should improve my water quality. Okay, that's something I'm going to dive into, and so on and so forth. And using those 6 kind of as a checklist. I'm like, all right, so this is causing me stress. This is not causing me stress, and kind of using that as a basis and a practical tool to look by that I really find to be very helpful when analyzing my own stress level, and kind of when I'm working with people to say, how's your moving, thinking, breathing, nutrition, hydration, sleep, and let's dive into each one of those and see where we can improve.
Extremely well said too, because all those things can be out of balance individually. And so,
right.
Like you said, well, yeah, I drink 8 glasses of water a day. It's like, well, what type of water are you drinking?
Right.
What's your intention with the water? Likewise with food. It's like, yeah, I eat healthy. It's like, what does that mean? Because you'd be shocked what some people consider to be healthy, right? I use low-fat salad dressing, and I get these salad mixes from the market in this plastic bag. It's like, I don't know about that.
It's not organic, and the lettuce is kind of yellow, and it's like, Yep.
Just basically soybean oil and salt.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, so I think that that's a really important. And while we're on that nutrition talk, I think that, obviously eating organic food is really important. And why? People ask me, oh, why does organic matter? Well, it's not just that, you know, organic means it's better. It's like, why does organic mean that it's better for us? Well, there's no chemicals. Generally speaking, it's coming from higher quality soil, because when we're using pesticides on non-organic foods, that's actually killing a lot of the microbes in the soil, which means that we have bacteria in our body, there's bacteria in the soil, and we have this, symbiotic relationship with these bacteria, these microbes that are actually really helping to bring nutrition to the plant. So at a cellular level and a nutrition level, non-organic food generally has less nutrition than organic food, simply because it's not able to absorb as much. The soils are more depleted. There's less microbes to help with that relationship. Now, why else? When there's pesticides going into us, yes, it may not kill the plant, but it's still in the plant. It's absorbing it. It's generally been genetically modified so that plant does not get killed by that chemical. But now it's in the plant, now we're consuming that. So now our body is having to detoxify that and deal with a toxic substance in the body, which now is using resources and, activating that stress response, because your body's like, hold on, we got some poison in here. We got to deal with this first. We can't worry about you, procreating or digesting or doing anything creative. We got to deal with this poison first. So it's using a lot of energy on the body. So switching to organic food, preferably local food, generally local, it loses some nutrients over time as it's being shipped. And also a lot of times just having the local microbes, again, coming back to the little bacteria, all those guys, having that in our system from a local source where we're breathing that air, interacting with that nature, that's really beneficial to have some of those local microbes inside of us. So with all that being said, there are also a lot of supplements that we can use, because now maybe you say, hey, Rob, hey, Zavi, look, where I live, there's no farmers markets. I can eat organic. I can't get local. This is the best I can do. I can get organic food. I can't do the local part. I still don't feel great. I'm doing all these things you talked about. And this is where I say supplementation is really helpful. So I think all the things we talked about first are the best place to start. First of all, most of those are free. Most of those you can do without any equipment. That's part of why I mention those things, is you don't need many resources to use those. So if your excuse is, or your reason, whatever you want to call it, is money, I can't do that because I don't have money. Okay, good. So you can go for a walk. That's free. You can meditate. That's free. Tai Chi, free, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if we want to really take things to the next level, we can use supplementation. So going back to our soil health, our soil is so depleted that the same organic piece of lettuce now, as opposed to 100 years ago, I think has like 400 times less nutrition than it did 100 years ago. Some crazy number, don't quote me on that number, but it's an insane amount less. So we'd have to eat 400 times the amount of lettuce to get the same from one block of lettuce before. So that being said, our food is not as nutritionally dense as we need to. And that's where people say, oh, can't we just eat food and we'll be healthy? In an ideal world, yes. But right now, that's a little bit of a challenge. So some of the biggest stress relieving specific supplements that I like to use, first of all, is magnesium. Magnesium is, I think it was 2016, over 80% of Americans were deficient in magnesium. And magnesium is known as the stress reduction mineral, basically. So that's pretty important right there. And then I think it was 95% of people are getting the bare minimum effective dose if they're getting it. So that means only like 5% of the population is actually getting a optimal dose of magnesium. So part of that comes from soil depletion. Part of that comes from not eating the right foods, eating processed foods. So supplementing with magnesium, I think, is very important. And there are some that I work with that I can definitely, share with Zavi, and he can put those in the description box here. So one thing that is really important to make sure you're getting multiple forms of magnesium. There's 7 forms of magnesium in the body, and or in the world right now that we use to supplement our magnesium. So if you're getting one that has 1 form of magnesium, yeah, that may help a little, but you want to make sure you're getting all the forms of magnesium. So again, I can put that in the description box here. Another one that I think is really good is, you want to say something, Zavi?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in with a little bit of how important magnesium is. and the
Sure.
different predisposing factors that cause magnesium deficiency. It's kind of hysterical. So magnesium is essential for energy production, nucleic acid and protein synthesis, ion transport, cell signaling, structural function, signal transduction and second messenger production, and electrolyte homeostasis, which is basically the entirety of your electromagnetic being, right?
It's
So
not very important.
none of that's very important. But then it's not only one of the most common nutrient deficiencies, but then when you look at the populations that are at risk for deficiency, we have GI disorders, super widespread. We have the elderly, widespread, adolescents, alcoholics, kidney disease patients, diabetes, and those on diuretics. So that's a huge portion of our population, just to add to what you said about the prevalence of magnesium deficiency and the fact that most forms of magnesium that you can buy at the market or you buy at your, like Costco, for example, are dog shit. They're really low quality.
Right.
You want preferably chelated forms of magnesium and different forms of magnesium that are readily absorbed. So for those with GI pathologies, it can often be a digestion and assimilation issue, even if you're eating foods that are high in magnesium. So Rob, could you tell them a little bit about the different types of magnesium that are present in the biooptimizers?
Yeah, so I actually don't have it on me right now, but I can grab it if you want me to grab it real quick.
Well, just off the top, how many forms of magnesium are in that?
Seven forms of magnesium. And so there also are some cofactors which help with the absorption rate there. So the biooptimizers is definitely what I found to be the best in my experience with using it in a very brief window. I've used it now every single day for about a month. And before that, I was using kind of here and there. But I can definitely say for me, again, someone who is, pretty good about their health, my muscle recovery has improved. I can't even quantify 4 times, 5 times, 6, 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
I am able to recover from workouts so much faster since I started taking this daily. So with that being said, even if we are very healthy and we're eating all organic, and I eat, probably 30% local, obviously preferably do better, but I think I do the best I can with right now. I'm still found that I was magnesium deficient. I was probably getting that minimum effective dose, getting the minimum, that I could still sleep and, be not stressed. But this has been completely game changing for my recovery. Stress as well really helps get into that parasympathetic mode before bed, take it 60, 90 minutes before bed. And so magnesium, I say, is number one for stress. And then I'd say number two I go into would probably be the reishi mushroom. So reishi mushroom is in Chinese medicine known as the mushroom of immortality. It is basically, if you're going to take one adaptogenic herb or mushroom, I would say reishi is probably the one. And that, again, is helping to get us into that parasympathetic nervous system, get out of that sympathetic nervous system. But the cool thing about reishi and adaptogens in general is that if we need a little bit more energy, it can actually give us some more energy. If we need to wind down, it can actually help us wind down. So it's kind of like that little skeleton key in a sense. It's like, all right, so which box needs to be unlocked today? And it goes into what the body needs. And it does that at a cellular level. Like it's like we take the reishi, it's like, well, what does my body need today? The reishi is going to figure it out and it's going to do that for us. So that's part of why it's called the mushroom of immortality, also called the 10,000 year mushroom, because, the myths, the legends had it that people lived at 10,000 years old when they took the reishi mushroom. Not making any claims or promises on that one. That'd be pretty cool. I'll let you know. But yeah, so that's a really good one too. Reishi mushroom, I'd say, is really important. And then a more recent one is CBD. So CBD is basically the non-psychoactive component of cannabis, hemp. So, THC is more of that psychoactive component, which both have their benefits. CBD, however, is really good in my experience for reducing inflammation, great for, again, recovery and parasympathetic activation. So those three right there, I say, are really helpful for stress. And then as sleep is also a very important factor, tart cherry juice. And again, making sure we get organic tart cherry juice, because there's a lot of cherry juice out there that's not organic. And again, it's probably going to be causing more harm than good. So getting organic tart cherry juice is also very good for sleep and really getting natural melatonin, which is a sleep hormone basically that helps us, sleep and sleep better and deeper and all that. So I'd say those four are kind of my big four in terms of stress and sleep improving supplements. I take typically the magnesium about 60 to 90 minutes before bed. Reishi, same thing, usually about 60 minutes. CBD, kind of whenever throughout the day. I think that's what's cool about CBD and Reishi actually, is you can kind of take them both whenever, as they are more adaptogenic. And cherry juice, 30 to 60 minutes before bed. And that's kind of my evening cocktail that has been very helpful for helping me enter into that parasympathetic and really get some deep, restful sleep.
I love all those. Super powerful. Rob and I have both experimented with all of those things. Really, really powerful superfoods, herbs, different components of healing that are necessary for not only stress management, but sleep, like you said. And I think we can both agree, if there's anything that is at the top of stress management, it's sleep. If your sleep is off, especially for a high achieving individual, everything else, you can't outwork or outmanage a bad night's sleep. You just have to accept it. So optimizing sleep is key. And with CBD, it's also really, really powerful for hypercortisolism. So those, in the adrenal fatigue model, you go hyper and then hypo and then insufficiency, but that's actually inaccurate to what happens in the body. There's a feedback mechanism where when you secrete more glucocorticoids like cortisol, it tells the pituitary gland to stop being as sensitive to ACTH and these other components of the HPA axis that regulates stress hormone production. So for people who are feeling really tired or perhaps a little bit jittery and they take CBD, it can actually start to blunt the effect of cortisol a little bit, which can be helpful if you're in that state of like, oh my God, way too much. And I would say that for people who experience anxiety and take CBD, the only thing that I would say is try not to take it within 90 minutes of waking up, because that's when your cortisol awakening response occurs. And that's where you produce at least 50% of the cortisol for the day. So if you blunt that, the likelihood of being really fatigued for the rest of the day is a little bit higher. But like Rob is saying, it's such a good go-to throughout the day, whether it's in the afternoon, before a nap, before sleep, as well as the tart cherry juice. The Reishi is fantastic. And putting those all together is a really, really potent combo for some powerful supplementation.
Yeah, I want to dive into one more thing before we kind of wrap up here, is that one thing you said that I think is really important to me is you said, if you're in that state, that stress out state, and one activity that, or in general, one mindset that I like to take is, if I'm in a state of stress, what I have to do? Change my state. What's a great way to change your state? Cold therapy. Taking a cold shower, ice bath, jumping in the ocean, that changes your chemistry basically instantly. So what I found, if I find myself all flustered or stressed, which doesn't happen all that often, but it still does happen from time to time. And, that's where my instant thought now, I've trained myself to think, change your state, change your chemistry, change your chemistry. You're feeling stressed, change your chemistry. How do I do that? Cold shower. Maybe it's a warm shower or a hot shower, but generally speaking, a cold shower changes my chemistry more instantaneously than anything else that we just said here. That is a shock to the system that is instantaneously changing everything. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that if we're looking for a quick fix, because, there aren't many quick fixes in the world, but I do believe that cold therapy is one of those things that is really a quick fix, that it really changes the chemistry very quickly. Because again, for things like Tai Chi meditation, you're going to get some results from those, but it's more of the building block effect that over time you get more and more effect as you go. Whereas cold shower, your first one, you're going to feel a different state on your first cold.
So well said. And this is from a man who plunges himself into ice baths very frequently and takes it to the maximum. So talk about a change of state, man. That is such a good way to put it. So recapping, Rob, for the people who are out there who are wanting to manage their stress with supplementation lifestyle, what were the top 5 that you recommended again?
Yeah. So just to recap, sympathetic, parasympathetic. We are sympathetic dominant when we're living in the state of chronic stress. Sympathetic is not a bad thing. It's been there to really support us in our human evolution. Stress is not a bad thing. Stress often tells us if something is right or wrong for us. It often tells us if this is good or bad for us. It often tells us a signal that we need to change an area of our life to be more balanced. So stress is not a bad thing inherently. It's our response to stress that can be improved. That being said, what are some practices we can do? Avoiding technology, connecting with nature, connecting with other living creatures, moving, whether that's exercise, walking, tai chi, stillness, meditation, getting things out of our head, journaling, talking, just general connecting, socializing with people. And like you said, not doing so from a place of partying, which can be great in its own regard. But if you're already in a state of stress, adding alcohol, staying up late, loud music, going to a club may not in the long term help. May feel good in the moment, but may not be best in the long term. Learning, reading, changing our mindset is another important one. And what all this really comes down to is our intention. What is our intention with each and every activity that we're doing? How present can we be in that moment? How focused can we be on breathing consciously to get ourselves into that parasympathetic state? And where are we on the spectrum of the 6 foundation principles? What is our level of moving? Are we moving too much? Are we moving too little? Are we doing the wrong amounts? Moving, thinking, breathing, nutrition, hydration, sleep. Where are we on each of those 6 as it relates to stress? Supplements. Magnesium, I'd say, is number 1. CBD, reishi, tart cherry juice. I'd say those are the main 4. And I always like to say, before diving into doing 30 different supplements, start with a few. Notice how each of them, make your body feel. Because if you do 30 at the same time, you're not going to know which one is actually helping you. So I always say start with a few to start, maybe 1 at a time, or 3, 4. I would say try not to do more than 4 at a time to start with. You can always add more once you know this is working for you. And at the end of the day, the best quick fix that I can offer is a cold shower. So if you're feeling stressed, change your state, change your chemistry. And again, you can also do it with breathing. I'd say it's also another pretty quick fix is breathing.
Dude, so powerful. All of these interventions alone will make a difference for sure. But I love what you said about moderating yourself and just really checking in with yourself about all these different practices and not getting too gung-ho on one or the other, but really remembering intent, remembering your focus, your presence with it, being present with the activity, and then bringing yourself back to, oh, cool, now I have more time for fun, I have more time for play, and I'm not so stressed out all the time that, everything flows rather than being kind of this grind.
Right, absolutely.
Now, Rob, where can people find you, your content, your epic podcast, your Instagram, all this good stuff? Plug them in.
Yeah. So I'd say the best place to find me is probably on Instagram. And my Instagram is just at Whole Health Connections, all one word, WHOLE Health Connections with an S on Instagram. And my website is wholehealthconnects.com. And the reason why it's Whole Health, not Whole Health Connections, because that domain name costs $2,500. So I decided to go for Whole Health Connects, which is a little shorter, and not $2,500 for the domain name. So Whole Health Connects is the best place to find me. And you can find my podcasts on there. You can find a lot of the superfoods and the supplements I discuss as well. And yeah, I'd say right now I'm really focused on, growing the podcast, sharing the best superfoods. As I said, I'm kind of a matchmaker of, tools, supplements, and, practitioners. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. And Whole Health Connections on Instagram is the best place to connect.
Oh, beautiful, man. Rob has some potent wisdom to share, posts great quotes, has an awesome children's book called Lovely Lessons that just came out. It's fantastic. No, it's Lovely Lessons is the platform. Shelly Shines is the book. Yes. Right. Shelly Shines. Super awesome. And just is one of the most creative and empowered people that I know. So Rob, thank you so much for joining us, man. We'll post all of the links to Rob's sites for these supplements so that you can support the homie as well as improve your stress management. And in the meantime, Rob, any parting words?
Well, first I want to thank you for having me. And as I said, I always enjoy talking about stress. It's definitely my most passionate subject. I think it's, I would say, the most important subject in modern man and woman history at the current moment. And I'd say, the biggest takeaway message I can say to people is just be more present, be as intentional as we can, and try to embody love and gratitude in every moment that we can. Because, just like our water, the way that our water, we're mostly water as humans. So if it's affecting water at a cellular level, it's affecting us. We're 2/3 water by weight. We're over 90% by cell count. So water is important. Intention is important. Love and gratitude. Be present. That's it. Thank you.
So well said. Rob, thanks for joining us. Everyone in your playground, build your inner playground. I guess we're in the playground. I'll see you tomorrow for some potent lessons. And in the meantime, Rob, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Zavi. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
100%.